Good morning, everyone. Again, it's a nice morning. And again, we will start as usual with quieting our mind by watching the breath for a few moments. Yeah, just try to make yourself comfortable, relaxed. And let go of any stress, tension in your body, mind. And feel the weight of your body on cushion, chair. And keep your mind on the breath. You breathe in, watching and observing it, and being aware you are breathing in. As you breathe out, observing mindfully and being aware of it. Then we can try to have a good intention, motivation for here. We can contemplate whether our life is going to be happy or miserable. It mostly depends on our state of mind more than external conditions. If we are able to keep our mind calm, peaceful, content, and positive, Even the external condition might not be so great. With physical challenges, health issue. Or challenge at your workplace. Challenges of our income, so forth. Still one can still have happy life as long as you will have that positive content, peaceful calm mind. And it is possible to have such state of mind even in such external condition. Many people have been able to do, and there are many are doing now, and we all have same potential. On the other hand, if our mind is not calm, peaceful, content, positive, even we might have good external condition, good health, we don't struggle with our financially, we have good job, everything, but one can be miserable, unhappy. So therefore, it's very important to work with our mind to have more happy life, more peaceful life. And also to be help, benefit to others. Your mind is calm, positive, we are able to benefit and help others. It's much more harder to help others when our mind is disturbed, unhappy, miserable. And in order to have such peaceful, positive mind, we need to train our mind through our practice meditation. And for that, we need to be reminded of those practices. Through listening, reading, reflecting on them. For that purpose that we have come here together, with the hope that it could remind us, inspire us, encourage us to continue to work with our mind, so we can be more benefit to ourselves and others. May our act of listening engage in discussions, reflection, contemplation. May all of this become cause and condition. to have a spiritual realizations of Bodhicitta mind and special wisdom of special insight, realizing the ultimate truth or emptiness. And may we really able to achieve fully awakened state through the wing of the Bodhicitta and the wisdom. So that we can be not only temporary help and benefit, but to be ultimate happiness, ultimate help and benefit for sentient beings. And not only few sentient beings, but to each and every sentient being. The Buddha, the Dharma, and become Geshe Sherab Nama Chanju Patu Dane Sagi Geshe Sherab Sola and Sange Dopa Sange Sherab Soji Sonama Chanju Patu Dane Satu Sagi Geshe Sherab Sola and Sange Dopa Anche tu geni rone, ta tunje pambe se, tambe shuni tunje se, kodam de la cha sa lo. So, um, in some of the subject that we have been discussing, talking, based on one of the Indian masters, great Indian master, Atisha, Lama Atisha. We are in the sections where he touched on the perfection of wisdom, special insight, and within that, he explained the importance of both the wisdom and compassion, the method. And then, he described what that method is, and then what the wisdom is, the important union of both practice, the method and the wisdom. And then, and so last week we just finished where he described what the wisdom here refers to. There could be many different kind of wisdom. And so here he described the wisdom when he talk about the wisdom. Here he's talking about the wisdom that relies on understanding empty of inherent existence. So I think we went up to that. And then, so that is, and now he explained more on how to engage in the practice of the special insight and the wisdom of special insight. And within that, again, in order to have the spiritual realizations of the emptiness through the meditations, um, you know, of course, one needs to have the wisdom of that through reflections and hearing or studying. Um, Kamala Shila, one of the another great Indian master, in his stages of meditation, he described about the three wisdom. You start with the wisdom that you realize that you have the wisdom through studies, through hearing, studying. Once you study that, then you try to reflect on that meaning of that what you have studied. Then you have developed another high level of wisdom. High level of wisdom that is more higher than the previous wisdom. And once you have developed that wisdom, that is based on reflection. Through reflections, using reasoning, logic, and so forth, then you come to some conviction. And once you have convictions, then you meditate on that. And you meditate on that convictions, and then that become the wisdom through meditation. And so here also Atisha also explained similarly, here. And again, also in Amalashila, also in Amatsongkhapa, Great Lamrim, and they all describe, about first having a what we call preliminary for the, to have the, preliminary or the conducive condition that one needs to get in order to have better results from meditating on infinite. So some of those conducive conditions or important conditions that one needs to have is, of course, um, rely on a teacher who might be able who can explain unmistakably that on emptiness that you are trying to learn, and then studying, contemplating, on that yourself, um, and then in order to have the spiritual realization and the successful meditation, then also the importance of the support of purification to overcome the obstacle, accumulating the merit to gather the conducive conditions, and engage in Guru Yoga in order to have the blessing. And through all those conditions or practice together, then one can have, then one would be able to develop the visualization through meditation. So I think we are on that particular path. So I think in some of page, at the end of that last verse, I think the one with the I have different translation with the numbers, so it's the 48. So here, so again, when we meditate on emptiness, first you have to use reason and logic to have total convictions in non-existence of inherent existence or empty of inherent existence. You need to have total conviction. In order to have that total conviction, then you use many different reason and logic. Some reason and logic, and sometimes one reason and logic, maybe it might not convince you completely, but maybe if you use different reason and logic, maybe it helps you more. Sometimes you need more reason and logic, sometimes you need less logic. It depends on the individual. Reason logic, as well as for some individual, also using quotations from certain masters that you trust in, also help. Whether it's the Buddha's own quotations or whether it's the Nagarjuna's, Santagiri's, Aradeva, and so forth. But of course, the main is using the reason and logic. So by relying on quotation and mainly by reasoning and logic, then as you study and as you reflect more and more, then it will lead to a total conviction. And even you have total convictions, you might not have that awareness all the time. And meditation is to help us to have that awareness, the convictions, aware of that, to have that awareness all the time. If you don't have that awareness all the time, even you have awareness, if it's somewhere behind, then it doesn't come into helpful, beneficial when you need it. For example, let's say during the difficult time, of course, everyone has a different view, but a lot of people have convictions. The masks help them. Okay. But even their convictions, sometimes they forget. Sometimes they forget because in that moment they didn't have that awareness, even though they're aware of that, but sometimes we forget a lot of things in our life. We have conviction about so many things, but in the moment we forget because we don't have that awareness in that moment. And so therefore, to have that awareness of all that realization all the time, and that is what we do in meditation. Through meditation, we have that spiritual realization. Spiritual realization means that you have that awareness all the time, not just one time. So that you can have that all the time. And that is same with all other realizations. And so before that, first we need to do that, risk. And so within that, then, Atisha explained here, reflecting, contemplating with the reason and logic. And then once you have that conviction, then you meditate, without conceptions, how to meditate without so much conception, without using so much conception, without using so much reason and logic, But at the very beginning, that is very important. So that's the way it comes. So here he says, logically, something existing cannot be produced, nor can something non-existent, like a sky flower. Consequently, as both fold would apply, something which is both could likewise not come into being. Maybe I would like to read the other translation. Something existing cannot be produced, nor something non-existing like a sky flower. Those either are both observed, and thus both of two will not occur either. So, using different reason and logic to understand emptiness, there are many different reason and logic you find in many of the different Indian writings. And this is one of the reasons you find in one of the Indian master in Tibet, and it is called Lobin Yishi. And in his Umadeni, in Truth of Madhyamika. So you find this reasoning that he used this kind of a reasoning and logic. And it is examining. So you find, examining whether the object itself or nature of the object exists inherently or not, whether the result of that object exists inherently or not, whether the cause of the object exists inherently or not. So analyzing the object itself, the nature of object itself, analyzing the result of the result as well as the cause. And so there are you find, and so this is the kind of the reasoning or logic they use for the examining the result. Okay, the result. So when the mind-only schools, such as Nagasena, when they say no, nothing exists or can be produced inherently, then again, some of non-Buddhists, as well as some other Buddhist school of thought, and also sometimes we feel that way too. If the things do not exist inherently, how can they function? How can they function? How can those things function? Therefore, they must have, because we see directly with our experience something coming into the existence, and then that abide for a while, and then it decays. Let's say the plant, flowers, it takes some time those plants to grow, and then it grows, and then it remains there how many days, weeks, months, and then it decays. That is what we experience directly with our sense consciousness. That's why we see. Similarly, that you see in many things, all things can be. So they say, if things do not exist inherently, how is that? That can come into the existence and abide and then decay. That is something, there's different functioning. And that is what, so how can it, therefore it must be inherent existence. How can it not be inherent existence? That is the well, some school of thought, both within the Buddhist and non-Buddhist, have that doubt or have that caution. But not only people who have those philosophy or who think about, even ordinary beings, that is how we also feel them. And so then, even though that is how it appeared to us, even though that is how we perceive to exist, but even though things do not exist inherently. And so then that is why here is using that kind of. So here with here the reason being used is in relation to the result. Produce, something being produced here meaning to the result, okay? So analyzes if there is some result being produced, is that result already existed at the time of cause or not? Is the result already existed at the time of the cause of that result or not? That is the analysis I'm trying to. If it is already existed, the result is already exists at the time of the cause. One, there's no need to produce the result because it already existed. Secondly, even it is already existed and it still produce the result, then it will again produce and it will be endless. And therefore it becomes observed, And so therefore the result cannot exist at the time of the cause. That is what something existing cannot be produced. Something that is already being produced at the time of the cause because it's already there, therefore it cannot produce result again. If it produces result continually, even it is already produced, then it will be endless. So that is, nor can something non-existent like a sky flower. If the result didn't exist at the time of cause, but if it was, if you say it produced a result later, it was not at the time of cause, but also that is not possible if it is inherently existing. Because if it is inherently existence, no matter how much the cause have potential it might have, even though it might have incredible potential, it cannot produce any result because it is inherent. If it's something inherently existence, then it will always be same. There can't be change. But if the result being produced later, not before, that means, it was not always there. It came in being produced because of depending on some other cause and condition. And if depend on some cause and condition or some other factors, then it can't be inherently produced. Inherently produced means independently produced. Inherently means that it was always like that. It doesn't change by depending on other factors. Otherwise, it will not be inherent. And therefore, also, it cannot be also produced later because if it's something inherent, it cannot be. Therefore, it is where something is non-existent, like a sky flower. This is one very kind of classical, popular example of non-existent you find in Indian scriptures. Sky flowers. Flower in the space because it doesn't grow in the space. One of the examples of non-existent like sky flowers or horn of the rabbit you find very. And I don't know, someone in there is some image. I don't know, someone really put it or that it was not a rabbit, but seems like rabbit with the horn, and people started to share that, to prove that this. I remember when we were studying, some of the monks or others started to share that, oh, there is a horn and a rabbit, so it is non-existence. It can exist, but so anyway, so that is consequently, as both have followed, also it can't be both. So the result cannot be produced by being at the time of cause, neither it can be produced later, uh, not being at the time of the cause, but later, nor the result can be produced by both, because both of them have problem false in that, false in each of those views. Um, so therefore, even if you say it's from the both, and also there is a, so therefore also it can't exist from the both. And something which is not both would likewise not come into being. Also, it can't be not a both, because there's only third possibility. Either it has to be either it's either if something is produced, it should be produced either being at the time of cause, or whether not being at the cause of past, but later. And there can't be other third possibility. And therefore, and from that kind of analysis, then it is saying the result cannot exist inherently. The result cannot be produced inherently, and therefore no result, no conditioned phenomena, or no result can be produced inherently. Therefore, all the conditioned phenomena, all the results are empty of inherent nature, empty of inherent existing or inherently produced, inherently arising. So again, with that, so that is the reasoning logic here being used here. And then next one, an entity is not produced from itself, nor from something else, nor from both, nor without cause. Therefore, it has no inherent nature. This one is examining the cause. After having examined the result, now it is examining the cause. So if something exists, do the. So this is the one of the logic, one of the reasoning you find in Nagarjuna's. It comes from Nagarjuna's his writing. Root of the wisdom, where he mentioned, Dale mentioned, your mind. Neither is arise, neither is the coming from self nor others. Neither from both nor without cause. So therefore, whatever object, whatever phenomena there are, there is nothing that arises or nothing that is being produced inherently. So here, so that is again that. So if something exists inherently, that means something existing or being produced inherently, then is something existing from inherent cause. So there is something inherent from something. So here then something exists or being produced. Does it depend on cause or not? That is the first question. Any condition phenomena that is being produced or that is being arising, that is being existing, does it depend on cause or not? If they do not depend on cause, how is it possible they were not there before and now you see them? During the winter, you didn't see the plant, now it's starting to grow. How come it was not there before, or how it didn't, if it was not dependent on cause? If it's not dependent on cause, how come we have rain sometime, and how come we don't have rain sometime? How come we have snow sometime? Why we don't have snow sometime? Why is cold some days? Why is hot in some days? Why is cold in certain time? Why is hot in certain time? If it doesn't depend on the cause. You know, why do we feel healthy some days? Why we feel some unhealthy some days? Why we feel happy some days? Why we feel unhappy some days? If it doesn't depend on cause. You know. So if we try to see in our experience and surrounding everything, all conditions, it's clear it's cause. So therefore, those condition phenomena, function phenomena, impermanent phenomena, they depend on cause. So it is not without cause. It all have that cause. Because of the cause, because there is the cause, therefore, when there is change in cause and conditions, then there is change in our experience. When there is change in cause and conditions, then there is change in the weather. When there is change in the cause and condition, then there is change in our health, physical, emotional, mental health, everything. And so therefore, in something that is depending on cause, cannot be inherent existence. Then it's not inherent. Because something being changed by changing certain cause and condition. It was never like this. And whatever condition now is because of certain cause and condition. And that will also change when there's changing cause and condition. And that will also change when there's changing cause and condition. And therefore it can't be inherent. So something that depends on cause is absolutely contradictions to be inherent and also dependent on cause and condition. So therefore, it's absolutely empty of inherent. Therefore, it's not without cause, but they are dependent on cause. If it depends on cause, then does it arise from by itself or from others or both? That is the way the other analysis comes, because this is here for analysis. You see in that, in this lesson a lot. So first, whether it depends on cause or not, does it has cause or not? So that, and then if it has cause, then does it come the cause? Does it come from by itself or by depending on others? What kind of cause? What kind of cause? And then if it come from itself, then it's similarly like the previous first reasoning. Then again, there's no meaning in something being produced if it's produced by itself, and then it will be endless again, like previous one, If the sprout is already being produced at the time of seed, if it's already being produced there, then there's no point for the sprout to come later. It's already there, So therefore, if it comes from itself, then it will be no reason for it to arise from that cause itself, and also it will be endless. And if it comes from other cause, then again there is a problem if something is inherently existing in others. Because if it's inherently existence, the cause and the result wouldn't have any connection. The cause is inherently existing, the result is inherently existing, so then there is no connections. And therefore, again, it can't be, if it come from others, then there is a connection between the cause and effect, cause and the result. There's a connection, there's a relationship between that. If there is such a relationship, because that result is dependent on that other cause and condition, then it can't be inherent. Then it can't be inherent. The result depending on some other cause and condition, it can't be inherent. The cause giving rise to another result, that also can't be inherent. If it inherently existing, that give cause to others, either you will be giving cause on that all the time, or it cannot. And that is also neither, For example, if the seed is inherently existing, the seed cannot produce the flower and the stem and the flower, the plant and the flower. It is something inherently existing, and so therefore, neither it comes from inherently existing other cause. So it is not being produced by depending on inherently existing cause itself, neither is produced by depending on inherently existing other cause. And if it not exist from its inherently existing itself and others, then it can't be both, because each of them has fault. And therefore is neither from itself, neither from others, nor from the both, nor without fault. And therefore, it can't be inherent existence and is empty of inherent existence. Therefore, all the conditioned phenomena, all the functioning phenomena, all the impermanent phenomena, are absolutely empty of inherent nature, empty of inherent existence. Even though they are empty of inherent nature, existence, but still, due to our mind, it appears inherent existence. That means is mistaken. Appearance is mistaken. The appearance is mistaken. And the mind that perceived to exist the way it appears, also that mind is mistaken mind. And the appearance is only there because of previous imprint of the ignorance and the delusion. But in reality, the objects that appear to our mind to exist inherently, in reality, they do not exist inherently. They are empty of inherent existence. They are empty of inherent existence. So that is the reason, and that is the logic and the reason being used here. And then other reasoning here you see being used here. Alternately, when you analyze any phenomena as to whether it's singular or multiple, no inherent nature of the phenomena are thus determined to be no nature. I want to see the other translation. The previous one here, the other translation. A thing is not produced from itself, nor from others, also not from both, nor causelessly either. Thus, it does not exist inherently by way of its own entity. So that one, so we just finished the 4 different analyses. Okay, whether it depends on cause or not cause, if it depends on cause and 3 different analyses. So then next one that I just said. Moreover, when all phenomena are examined as to whether they are one or many, They are not seen to exist by way of their own entity, and thus are ascertained as not inherently existing. These ones you find in Shantarakshita, in his one of his writings, where he says, all the phenomena within self and others are ultimately in nature of free from one or many, or empty or free, empty or free from one or many, like a reflection. And so again, this kind of analysis come from that one of those Shandiraki, that analysis that we find. So this one is now analyzing the nature itself, the object, nature of the object itself, not the result, the cause, but its nature of itself. You know? Whether it's the self, whether it's our aggregate, such as our body, our mind, or any of other phenomena, if they exist inherently or truly existence, then it has to be either one with its part, or it has to be separate from the part, or many from the part. And that kind of analysis is being used here. So any phenomena, if they exist inherently by itself, then it has to be either one with its part or the basis, or separate from them. Or in other words, either you have to find within the part or the basis, or you have to find outside of the part or the basis. When we think of something exists from its own side objectively, what do you think in your mind? What is objective from its own side? What is your its own side? Let's say a car exists from its own side, by itself from its own side, inherently. When you say the car exists from its own side objectively, where is that object? What is from itself? When you say itself, where is it? What is it referring to? Exists from its own side. When we think of any object, or the object exists from its own side or objectively, what is, when you say objectively, or when you are referring as objectively, existing objectively, existing from its own side, what is that? We are referring to the parts that make that object. The parts or the basis that make that object. So if something exists objectively from its own side, so then it has to be found when you analyze this with ultimate analysis. If it exists inherently, then it has to be found within the parts that make that object, or outside of that. If it cannot be found within the object and either outside of the object, how can you say it exists from the object? Objectively. When you analyze, you cannot find within the parts that make object, nor outside of those parts that make object. So then how can one say that that object, that things or object exists objectively or from its own side. So that is the case. The kind of the so in that analyze when we starting with the self, let's start with the self. Maybe that might be more relevant because of the self grasping instead of using the table, even though we have grasping to the table too. But I think the grasping to self is much more stronger than grasping to the table. Even though maybe for some, I don't know, maybe you might have more stronger grasping the table. Yeah. So when you think of self, what is self? So for I means self, you know. Is made from our aggregates, our physical form, our mind, our different, feelings, emotions, all related to those five aggregates. But if you try to find the self within the aggregate, with the basis or with the part of that self, or that makes self, our body is not self, our feeling is not the self, our discriminating mind is not the self, our conventional factors mind is not, or perception is not um, self, nor the consciousness is the self. Nor we can find the I or the me within the body, is part of the body, nor the I can be found within each part of the feeling aggregate, nor it can be found within any part of, if you go each part, that make the discriminating consciousness within that, nor it can be found with compositional factor consciousness, nor it can be found with the consciousness mind itself. If you try to, because if you try to go in each of those parts, each part is not them. Each part has no functioning of the self. It cannot function just like one part of this table cannot function, cannot be table because it doesn't have the function of the table. Similarly, each of those aggregates and part of these aggregates does not have the function of the self. So each part are not that. So you cannot find within the aggregate or within the each part of those aggregates. Nor can you find outside the aggregate. If you take away your aggregate, your body, your feeling, your distinguishing mind, and all other, the compositional factor, which means all your other mental aggregates, such as good thought, negative thought, all of them follow, or the consciousness, the primary sense consciousness. If you take all of them, there's no self. There's no self, and there's nothing that functions as a self. If you take all of that away, you cannot find outside those aggregates. So nor can you find within the aggregate, nor you can find outside the aggregate. Therefore, when you analyze it with such ultimate analysis, it cannot be found within the aggregate, outside the aggregate. Therefore, there can be inherently or self-existing from its own side. There is no self that exists from its own side, or the self that exists ultimately or absolutely, or the self that exists inherently. So that is one analysis. This analysis, one of analyzing this. But if you try to say whether it is, one or many, one or separate, one of them is analyzing, could be, analyzing whether self is one with the aggregate or separate with the aggregate. If it is one with the aggregates, then there are many problems. Just like there are 5 aggregates, there will be 5 self. Just as there is only one self, there will be just only one aggregate and not 5 aggregates. So there are many. Also, if they are same, identical, inherently self one, then also we cannot say, this is my body, this is my feeling, this is my mind. That will be totally misconception or wrong. So therefore, when you use that analysis, then you say it's not same, it's not one with the aggregate. If it's not inherently one with aggregates, then it can't be many, because without one there can't be two, without two there can be more. Many means it starts with one. If there's no one, then there's no many. So that is how they use the reason when you use one or many. Sometimes in Southern you use either one or separate. And if it's with one that, then there's problem. If it's separate from, then there is also problem. False in that. That is, the self is not one with the body, not one with the consciousness. Because if it is, there is not a problem. If it is one with the body, then the self, there is no self that actually birth. If there is no self that actually birth, then all the karma that we have created become wasted. There's no one to experience those results. If there is no self that because if they are same, then when we cremate the body, then there is no continue. It doesn't continue to connect, and so then there will be no self to continue and to experience the result. And then there is fault in all this concept of the karma, that once you create it, nothing get wasted. One will have to experience the consequences of whatever good or bad karma, because there's no one to experience that. Also, if it's same with the body, then it's not possible to achieve enlightenment, nirvana. If it is not possible, there's no point in following the path. And then there is no point in practicing the Dharma or spiritual path. So all these problems come. Therefore, it can't be one with the body, nor one with the mind. If it is one with the mind, also there are many problems. There will be many problems on conventional world, on relative world, or reality. If it's one with the mind, then you can't say, someone look at me, someone hit at me, because it's when someone hit, your body, because if self is one with the consciousness, then you can't say, someone hit at me. You can't say someone beat me. You can't say, that I'm getting, bigger, smaller, all of that. So therefore, also it can't be one with the consciousness, nor separate from the mind and the consciousness. And if it's not one with the aggregates, nor separate from the aggregates, so how can it be that it exists from its own side, objectively from its own side? You know? And therefore is absolutely empty of truly existing, infinite existing. And that analyze, we use same with the body, use same with our feeling, consciousness, and we use same with all the objects. You know, everything, external, internal, you know, samsara, nirvana, any object, physical matter, non-physical matter, small, big, whatever, you know, everything exists by depending on its path. If something exists from its own side by itself objectively, then, you know, does it exist? Or can it be found when you analyze within each of those paths, which make that, or outside of those paths, or whether it's one with the path or separate from the path? If you do that analysis, that the way we analyze with the self, you can apply that to all the phenomena, everything. And therefore, same analysis, same outcome. Therefore, nothing can exist inherently, or nothing can exist by itself or from its own side. You know? Things only exist by depending on its path, depending on its part or basis, on the coming together of the basis of path. And on the basis of that, then there is, you know, the mind that impute that object. That's how things exist. But to our mind, that is not how it appears. To our mind, it doesn't appear the object will exist by depending on all their part, all their basis, and on the basis of that, the mind imputing to that object as that object. To our mind, it appears to exist from its own side by itself, objectively there. Not only there is appearance, then we also have same follow the perception, you know, same perception as it appears, and that becomes the problem, you know. That and so yeah, that is the here the reasoning. Ultimately, when you analyze any phenomena as to whether it's singular, multiple, no inherent nature of the phenomena are thus determined to have no nature or no inherent nature. So I think maybe I will stop here, and maybe I can take some portions. Yes. Yeah. I don't know whether you want to use.
Yeshua, Alexis asked on Zoom, does time inherently exist?
No. Time do not exist inherently. Space does not exist inherently. Everything is dependent arisings. You know, time is dependent arising. Space is dependent arising. Nothing exists inherently from Buddhist point of view. And as I mentioned, if you use the same analysis, you can apply that same analysis to the time. You can analyze that same analysis to the space as well. So therefore, nothing can exist inherently. Yeah. Any other? Yes, please, Kevin. Oh, yeah.
I have two questions. One is the page 7, stanza 49 and 50. Page 7, the top, an entity is not produced from itself. And then the next stanza, they are not seen to exist by way of their own entity, or in other words, no inherent nature is observed. So it's always interesting with tight logical arguments to see if there's any exceptions. So what came to mind was the whole idea of fractals. Fractal, Fractal. Do you know what that is? Buddy, do you want to come up with some great examples in nature? No? A snowflake. When you look at it and then you look closer, it's repeated and repeated ad infinitum. So it's a structure that goes on infinitely. So how would you explain that? Because it is, in fact, produced from itself by definition of what a fractal is. And it has an inherent nature because it produces itself ad infinitum.
It might produce something, but it is not always the same thing. It is producing different things. Exactly same color, same size, same. I don't know. So I don't know to say anything about it at the moment because I don't know whether that produce exactly same color, same size, exactly everything same, identical. And if that everything identical in terms of color, size, everything, then there's something to talk about. I don't know with it. Otherwise, if it is even it is producing as similar, it could be different size, it could be different color, it could be, then it is changing. Yeah, maybe they can debate. Okay.
Here. So Karen has one more question. Let's wait for this one. Yeah.
So doesn't your self-argument destroy the idea of the solo practitioner in Tantric Karma Mudra? It doesn't seem that that practice would really function as you've defined the self. Oh, slowly? Okay. Doesn't your self-argument that you just concluded with destroy really the idea of the solo practitioner in Tantric Karma Mudra? It doesn't seem, based on the kind of argument you're giving, that solo practice would really function. The solo practice in Karma Mudra, it's called, it ends with a J, I think. David would know. David, what's it called? No, the Dalai Lama has a pronouncement on this aspect of highest tantric practice, which either requires two people or for monastics, one, who imagine the second. So my question is, based on your definition of self, wouldn't that destroy the idea of that solo monastic practitioner imagining well, I don't know if it's the yib or the yam. I never get the term right.
I think one of the lot of time people you heard the first time when we did what you call how it does not exist. But maybe you didn't hear the last one, how self exists by coming together of the parts and basis, on the basis of part and basis coming together. Then there is, with that, then there's the concept, the mind that label as the self, and that is how self exists. So here we have to differentiate always existing and inherent existence. Non-existent and non-inherent existence. We have to always here, all through that is rejecting inherent existence. It never rejects existence. That is where lot of people always get confused, no matter how many times you explain it. Sometimes you use as reasoning to refute the inherent existence. It doesn't refute the existence itself. If it refutes the existence, then there is no point of practitioner to practice. There's no enlightenment. There's no path that leads to enlightenment. Therefore, why we are to practice and why we're studying? All of this become useless if there's no self, if there's no enlightenment, if there's no path. That isn't the case that the Nagarjuna or any of those masters, Buddha, rejecting that is about the inherent existence. There is no inherent existing self, there is no inherent existing path, there's no inherent existing result. And that is being refuted or negated through such reasoning logic. Yeah.
Question from Andrew.
So Geshe, in my garden, I was thrilled because last year I had one sunflower and now I have 10. I know they don't exist, but can you talk about the path? Because all the sunflowers now look different. And so am I looking at one or experiencing one single path for all those flowers, or do they each have their own path? Where did that path come from? In your example.
The example path I'm using is more on spiritual path. Okay, so I don't know exactly, but definitely, I guess definitely, as you said, you had one sunflower last year, and you are 10. Maybe next year, maybe 20. Maybe after few years, it take everything over, and maybe you might not be so happy with that. You think you might think it's too much, and then, but anyway, just joking. But that is still doesn't prove its inherent existence. It just proves non-inherent existence because of that. You had one that dropped some seed after last year's, the seed, it dropped some other seeds by wind, whatever, and then at the time either you got rain or you put rain, so you give other conditions that need, get a good soil for conducive for that, and then it started growing. So it grew into 10 because of many conditions. And so therefore, that is proof that it is non-inherent existence. If something is inherent existence, then it doesn't depend on other factors, whether it's cause conditions, whether it is parts, whether it is the thought, the concept. It doesn't depend on anything, and therefore it just shows how that is, non-inherent existence. And so again, I still didn't know exactly whether of course, they're all a sunflower, but they all have their own individual. Just like we're all human beings, we are human beings, but we all have different individuality. Okay. The same way, I'm sure those sunflowers, even though they're all sunflowers, I'm sure that they have a slightly different, in different way and their own uniqueness. So I don't know whether that's their path. I don't know, to see same at the same time different. Different at the same time same. There's a sameness. At the same time, there is a differentness. Their own uniqueness, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This question is from Shanka.
Thank you, Geshe. So all phenomena and the self have as its ultimate nature the emptiness of inherent existence, right? So does emptiness itself inherently exist?
Yeah, as I said, nothing exists inherently, so including emptiness is empty of inherent nature. Um, as we have been discussing on Wednesday class, some of the school of thought, they don't believe that there is inherent existing external objects, but they believe there is inherent existing consciousness. And Nagarjuna Middle Way School reject that. Not only the external objects are empty of inherent nature, but even the subject, the mind itself that perceives that, even the mind, even the most subtle mind, that continue from life to life, even the most subtle mind that continued after the enlightenment, even that mind is empty of inherent nature. And not only that, so even the emptiness itself, because sometimes when you find a solution to certain problems, then you might think, oh, that solution is the ultimate. And then you have grasping to that. And then if you have grasping to that, then again it is a problem. Even though you don't have grasping to all the external objects, you might not have even grasping to even your feeling, different feeling, even nice feeling, good feeling. You might not have even, not only just the external object, even internal feeling or experiences. But when you think, oh, emptiness is the solution to all the problems, this must be the ultimate. This is the key to everything. And one can have a grasping to that. Once you have grasping to that, then again you are still out of bondage in that. Still your mind is not properly free. Your mind is not properly free because you are tied up with one object. Even though you might be free from many other objects, still you are. So therefore, even the emptiness is empty of inherent nature. Even emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, we have to talk in relation to the object. Emptiness of what? Okay. Emptiness of the table, emptiness of self, emptiness of the iPad, emptiness of the mic. We have to talk in relation to object because there is no emptiness without depending on any object. And so there is no emptiness of self if there is no self. There is no emptiness of the table if there is no table. There is no emptiness of the iPad if there is no iPad. There is no emptiness of the mic if there is no mic. And so therefore, even that emptiness, each of those emptiness is dependent on other factors. So that is one way of understanding how they also, even the emptiness, depend on other factors, other conditions, the objects, and also the emptiness also depends on the mind, the concept, also it depends on that, something that is empty of inherent nature, then on the basis of that, then the mind, the concept level as emptiness, right? That is empty of certain nature. When something's empty of certain nature, then that is what the mind label as emptiness, on depending on certain conditions, certain factors. So therefore, even emptiness is definitely dependent on arising, depending on other factors, conditions. Therefore, even the emptiness cannot exist inherently. So emptiness also empty. So even when Buddha explained emptiness, like if you go in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, in some of them he talked about, mostly truth, emptiness, I think is quite, you see, very emptiness of self and emptiness of phenomena. Normally that is how to kind of distinguishing. Then he spoke about 4 emptiness, 8 emptiness, 16 emptiness, 20 emptiness. And so in those, there is emptiness or emptiness. Because that is what happened, oh, then you see this is emptiness, then you are able to get grasping of that. And then you say, but then you started to think, oh, this is inherent existence. Again, that is also proof that is not inherent existence. So then you let go of grasping to that. Again, oh, this is the solution. Then, so in order to do that, then Buddha explained emptiness of every object. Especially, even though he said all phenomena are inherent nature, but sometimes he have to be specific, because even we hear sometimes all objects are inherent existence, still we might think, oh, what about the mind? What about the space? What about the time? What about the emptiness? So sometimes he have to be more specific, going with the object specifically, Even though he has already all phenomena emptiness, but sometimes still we, but so anyway, so okay. But again, emptiness is very fascinating subjects, important, crucial to Buddhist in Buddhist studies and spiritual path, because it's key to understanding of the emptiness correctly. Understanding of emptiness correctly and having that spiritual realization through meditation on that is a key to overcome all the delusions, all the afflictive emotions. So it's very important. At the same time, it's one of the subjects that has always been difficult and misunderstood subject throughout the history. Not just now, throughout the history. After Buddha passed away, all four schools of thoughts. Within the Buddhists, there came four schools of thought. Most debate on emptiness. When it comes to love, compassion, they have no argument with that. But when it comes to selflessness, that is where they have different understanding. And it continues even in my cases, or even us who have studied 40 years in the monasteries. I think loving kindness, compassion, patience, bodhicittas, moral discipline, we don't have problem with understanding. It is in integrating and practicing, Practicing, integrating is not easy, difficult. To be patient, to be kind, compassion all the time. But in some intellectual understanding, those are not so difficult. But when it comes to selflessness and emptiness, still, when you read many of those Indian masters, or you read the sutra, still you wonder what does that mean? And your mind started to still, did I understood correctly or not? So sometimes even so, when it comes to emptiness, and that is why I think it requires many other support to have a correct understanding and realization. Of course, obviously, a lot of studying, reading different commentaries if possible, to have, instead of living, oh, it's too difficult for me, let me put it in the shelf, maybe one day, maybe I might be able to read it. I think a lot of time people does that, this is not for me, because it's not so easy. And, but if you put on the shelf, then probably next life too, you might also put on shelf, so even you cannot completely grasp, you have to study and at least have some imprint. And then with the time, maybe you read more, you hear more, you study more, you reflect more, contemplate, maybe then things started to make more sense here and there. And sometimes word cannot make, sometimes it seems like the word are unable to answer you, but when you do the practice meditations, then sometimes it clicks. Oh, that is what it is, And so again, all this, and then of course, as I said at the very beginning, the support of conducive conditions such as merit, overcoming the obstacles through practice of purification, and trying to generate inspirations, through the blessings of the Buddha, gurus, through the practice of Guru Yoga. So when we combine all these practice, then I think there is more chance to have the realization of such, And as I mentioned before, that was also most of the master teacher like that. When you have all these conditions, sometimes saying very small things, you might have a realization. I think one of the first day I was explaining, one disciples came to see Milarepa, one of the masters, great master. And so these disciples has a lot of strong imprint from the past and have all the conditions. So Milarepa asked him, search for the self. Search for the self. Where is the self? And he tried to do that by Milarepa didn't give any explanations. Didn't give any explanation. He just said, where is yourself? Search for the self. He started doing that, and he had a realization of that in that moment. There are many stories of that. Certain teachers just say something, and the students, and because it's something they have already have all the right conditions, all the right conditions, and then it doesn't require, when you're all the right conditions, it doesn't require so much explanation, But when we don't have all the right conditions, and then we can give. Sometimes the word cannot really solve. Sometimes it can only help to a certain degree. That was I think I also mentioned same with Lama Tsongkhapa. One time he asked Manchu Shiri whether his understanding or realization of emptiness according to the Madhyamika Nagarjuna point of view. And the answer he got, he was disappointed. That no, your understanding of emptiness is not only according to Prasangika, not even the Sotandrika, even Madhyamika, And so he asked, what can I do to have the correct realizations of the Prasangika Madhyamika point of view? And then advises, you need to continue to study, contemplate, meditate. At the same time, you have to integrate the practice of purification, accumulation, merit, and Guru Yoga. And if you do all these practices together, one day you will have that. And then that is also Lama Tsongkhapa's own experience. And also he shared that also in his writing too, and that is the experience of a lot of masters, So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of make a little comment on that. Yeah, thank you everyone.